Chapter 5. "I hate traffic!" Scout Galley shouted as she sat in her car on I-30. The sun beat down on her, and though she had her windows down, she was still burning up. "What is the point of traffic? I'll bet absolutely nothing is causing this." "Except stupid people," Duke said from the back seat. "Turn the air conditioner on." "No, every time I do, the service engine light comes on." "I don't see why it would," Duke said. "The air conditioner has nothing to do with the engine." "Really?" She looked at him through the rearview mirror. "If I turn on the air and the light comes on, can I punch you in the nuts?" "Sure." Scout turned the dial and air blew from the vents, warm at first, but slowly growing cooler. She and Duke rolled up their windows as the cars in front of them moved a few inches. "Why do I have to sit in the back anyway?" Duke asked. "I need the front seat for my cashews." As she said this, she reached over to the large bag she'd bought at a gas station before hitting the freeway. "That's what laps are for, bitch," Duke replied with a laugh. "My lap has my energy drink in it." "That's what cup holders are for." "My cup holder sucks. Every time I take a turn, drinks go flying." Scout looked at the mirror to see Duke adjusting his thick, black-rimmed glasses. "Maybe you shouldn't take turns at 50 miles an hour, he said. Scout laughed as she took a sip of her energy drink. She studied her reflection for a second, adjusting her long brown hair out of her face to expose a freckled nose and dark green eyes. She then looked at her dashboard, waiting for the light to come on. She looked farther ahead and to the right, where the Sainsbury Hotel stood. She grinned as she imagined the weekend ahead. In her 22 years, she'd never been to a convention, and she couldn't help but imagine hundreds of geeks dressed in costumes. "You know," Duke said, "cashews and energy drinks don't mix. You're going to feel like you have a rock in your stomach." "Why didn't you tell me that sooner?" "Because you made me sit in the back." "Fair enough." Traffic finally got moving again. Scout took the exit that led to the hotel. The Sainsbury was a large, luxurious place with 12 floors. Though Scout hated driving to Dallas, she loved looking at the skyscrapers, the way the sun reflected off the windows, or, if it was night, the way the city lit up with man-made light. Now that she was here, she was going to enjoy her weekend. If it got her mind off the anniversary, it was all good. Nearly a year ago, she'd been part of a bizarre series of events involving a man wearing a hoodie and zombie mask. The man had terrorized Scout and her friends, had even killed one of them. The killer turned out to be her friend and roommate, Jaren. Scout still couldn't believe he'd been capable of murder. She'd known him for years and had considered him one of her best friends. Of course, she hadn't found out until much later that Jaren had killed his own mother when he was a child. That had been an accident, though. He'd tried to shoot his abusive father, but the man had jumped out of the way at the last second, leaving Jaren's mom in the gun's path. Jaren claimed he took on the persona of the masked man to scare Duke away from a movie Duke decided to direct. The plot was based on a murder that had occurred on the same night as Duke's indie film premiere at Scout's Theater. The premiere had been a disaster, putting Duke in a fragile state of mind. News of the murder had only ignited his imagination. Unfortunately, that night also had a profound effect on someone else. Ricky Nelson had survived that night of horror, but her boyfriend had not. Ricky's ex attacked them, tied them to chairs, and stabbed Ricky's boyfriend to death right in front of her. All while wearing the costume Jaren would later don. When Ricky found out about Duke's movie, she took action. She and Jaren joined forces to put an end to the movie, one way or another. Jaren had only wanted to scare his friends into stopping. He likened Duke to his own abusive father. Suffice to say, Jaren had issues with unsympathetic bullies. Now Jaren and Ricky were in prison. Jaren for the murder of one of Scout's friends, and Ricky for attempted murder. Scout hoped Jaren rotted for what he did to Gina Mathers. As Scout pulled into the hotel's multi-level garage, she thought of her best friend Taylor. Gina had been Taylor's girlfriend, and Jaren stabbed her in the heart right in front of Scout. As far as Scout knew, Ricky had only killed her murderous ex after she escaped captivity, but that had been enough to set off something in the young woman. The psyche is extremely fragile, and certain people handle stress in certain ways. What followed was weeks of hell, something straight out of a horror movie. Scout loved watching horror, but living it was a completely different story. She, Duke, and Taylor had almost died during the final act at Duke's house. But Taylor had come to the rescue. She'd called the cops, who'd arrived just as Ricky was raising the knife that would have ended Duke's and Scout's lives. Talk about a close call. Duke had a scar on his left shoulder to remind him of that night. Scout shivered as she parked. As they got out of the car, Duke saw her face. "You're thinking about last year?" he asked. She nodded. "Well, don't. Think of all the fun we'll have this weekend. There are going to be so many hot chicks in cool costumes. By the process of deduction, some of them have to be lesbians." "Process of deduction, eh?" Scout shook her head. "Maybe I'll meet someone," she added sarcastically. They pulled their bags from the trunk and made their way to the ground floor, where the entrance to the strange world awaited.